The Presbyterians were one of the most influential denominations in American political, religious, and cultural life. They played an early role in the discussions about religious freedom. Scholars like Bradley J. Longfield and Joseph Tiedemann have noted that Presbyterian ministers spoke out on the right to preach without a license and were involved in the protest about the appointment of an Anglican bishop for the American colonies. This is something that Thomas Kidd brings up in the book God of Liberty as one of the events that moved the United States into the American Revolution. Dissenting clergy saw the potential appointment of an Anglican bishop for the colonies as an attempt by the British to tighten control over the colonies. Many famous Presbyterians were also instrumental in the First Great Awakening. Samuel Davies and Gilbert Tennent are some of the most famous. These men and other evangelical Presbyterians were instrumental in this movement that brought so many American colonists to faith in Christ just before the outbreak of the Revolution. Davies' influential preaching style has been credited with influencing the speaking style of famous Patriot leader Patrick Henry. Kidd mentions Henry's attendance at Davies' sermons while he was a young man, and Henry certainly employed some of the same theatrical delivery that Davies was famous for in his speeches. In addition to inspiring leaders like Henry, many Presbyterian ministers were directly involved in advocating for the American Revolution. Much of the rhetoric in favor of leaving the British Empire had a religious component to it, and this denomination was frequently at the forefront. In the minds of several British officials, Presbyterians were significantly responsible for the rebellion. Kidd noted that New Jersey Governor William Franklin wrote to his father that Presbyterians tried to, quote, spread the unrest to all the colonies. Perhaps the most famous of the Presbyterian ministers involved in the Revolution was John Witherspoon, the only clergyman who signed the Declaration of Independence, who both Longfield and Kidd mentioned supported the Revolution with speeches and sermons in favor of it, advocating for totally breaking with the British Empire. The Presbyterians also played a major role in shaping the thought patterns of early America. According to Longfield, they founded approximately one-fourth of the church-related colleges that were founded before the Civil War. While it would be obvious that these colleges would help to shape American theological thought, the fact that many of the elites in American society attended these colleges, most notably what would become Princeton, gave the denomination tremendous influence on the thought patterns of the founding fathers. One of these ideas was the covenant theology that the Presbyterians shared with the Congregationalists. This idea that America was a chosen nation, a new Israel that God would protect and bless if the people of the U.S. followed him, was a major theme that is explored by many scholars, including Kidd and Daniel L. Dreisbach in his book Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers. It also played a role in the frequent writings and sermons that founders and pastors like Witherspoon produced that spoke on the need for men of virtue to run the nation so the republic would not fail. Dreisbach's chapter on Micah 6:8 is an exploration of this theme of covenant theology and the need for men to lead virtuous lives for the U.S. to continue to receive God's blessings. Presbyterians were involved in the Second Great Awakening and the movement of Christianity into the frontiers of the United States. Perhaps the most notable example is the Cane Ridge Revival, which Ronald P. Bayers notes had its origin in the Scottish Presbyterian traditions and the multi-day camp meeting that celebrated communion. They also partnered with various ecumenical societies that helped missionaries reach the expanding frontiers with the gospel. One of the most interesting Presbyterian ministers in the late 19th and early 20th century was Frank Higgins, who worked with lumberjacks in Minnesota. Harold T. Hagg, in his article The Lumberjack Sky Pilot, noted that Higgins' work brought the gospel to over 30,000 men working in the timber industry. Presbyterians were also involved in many of the reform movements, some of which caused splits in the denomination, particularly slavery, where some Presbyterians opposed it, and some supported it, as Samuel C. Pearson Jr. discusses in Presbyterianism in America. In Longfield's view, involvement in some of the later reform movements started as a continuation of the Presbyterians' tradition of helping to shape American culture, but eventually moved the denomination into a place of being influenced and shaped by the culture instead by the end of the 20th century, something that Longfield suggests they should reverse in his article. The Presbyterians were clearly an influential group in American history. Their contributions to American political and theological thought are well documented. The spread of Christianity during the First and Second Great Awakenings was the result of many denominations, but the Presbyterians were among the leaders. They had a strong documented influence on the rhetoric that led to the American Revolution, and many of their members contributed to the reform movements that followed the Second Great Awakening. Though they experienced many denominational splits, particularly between the New Lights and Old Lights, their rich history helped shape the American Republic into the country that it became.